This week on Art's InSight, using art to save souls.
The closer you get to God, the less laws you need because you're not going to do anything wrong.
A puppetry play about a platypus.
It's real, it's alive, it's the platypus, and it was just really magical.
Stained glass for the 21st century.
I take those same techniques and I just use them in a way that I find interesting.
And Shakespeare joins the Vegas lineup.
We have one thing that most of those shows don't have, a really good script.
I'm Ernie Menil, and it's time to get Art's InSight. Welcome to Art's InSight in the Heights. We're hanging out on 19th Street at the First Saturday Arts Market. We'll tell you about this monthly art market and check out some of the wares for sale in a few minutes. But first, we meet a Houston artist whose spirituality is the driving force behind his work. And for Forrest Prince, becoming an artist was part of a long, hard journey.
Well, I was in a lot of trouble. I was strung out on drugs. Police were after me. Former district attorney was on my deal, and the only reason that so I finally got down so low that I did what I thought I'd never do. I turned to God and asked God to save me. This is one of my first pieces. It's after I read the Gospel of Peace. The major cause of disease and aging is eating animals and cooked food. Mankind was never intended to eat this way. As long as a person eats animals, he'll never have peace. And so I'm trying to get people to become a vegetarian. And that's translated from the Dead Sea Scrolls. Praise God. The higher you eat, the higher your consciousness is, and more in tune you are with God and nature, or the Holy Spirit. I don't put much thought into anything, brother. It's all given to me by God. People give me things, and sometimes I've got a container full of junk and crap to some people, but it'll turn into something sooner or later. Just like these law books. It's going to be a big pile, maybe 6 or 8 feet tall, and what it says on there, the further people are from God, the more laws they need. The closer you get to God, the less laws you need because you're not going to do anything wrong. Most of the theme of my work is trying to wake people up and let them realize what they're doing wrong. I use a lot of mirrors so people can see themselves in the work. This particular piece starts out with a club, then a spear, then a bow and arrow, and then a machine gun. And then the centerpiece is a rocket. And the title of it is still Savages, which is exactly what we are. Cross back there, so it looks like a double cross, but that's going to be all mirror, and it's the title of it is The Father and I Are One Some of the Time. It's not easy for me. I'm not really that talented, you know. It's a struggle to make something. I'm just grateful I'm being used. That's it. That's all I can say.
Welcome to the First Saturday Arts Market, which happens, you guessed it, the first Saturday of each month right here in the Heights. And to tell us more about it is Mitch Cohen. Hello, Mitch.
Hey, Ernie, good to see you. Thanks for coming.
So tell me about this. You decided to bring together artists to do this market. Why?
I'm an artist, and all my friends are artists, and we just needed a place to sell our artwork. There was few options at the time, 10 years ago, and I thought, hey, why not have a mini art festival every month in the Heights? We're at 548 West 19th Street, next door to Jin's Antiques and Yoga One Studio.
It's scary when you say 10 years ago. I finally realized 2004 was actually 10 years ago.
10 years ago.
And this has grown considerably over the time.
It has. We started with about 24 artists, and progressively more and more artists found out about it. I no longer had to go find them. They found me. And now there's a wait list, and the patrons have caught up, and they're here every month to join us.
Okay, you started with how many, did you say?
24.
And how many do you have here now?
Every month we have between 40 and 50 artists.
Okay, and tell me, what kind of things would we find here?
Every art medium is represented. Paintings, sculpture, jewelry, and including glass, woods, metal, fiber arts, everything.
Tell me a little bit about why it's important to support local artists and to do this.
Well, it kind of goes both ways. The way I see it, if you're a patron buying art, you get to meet the artist directly and talk to them and find out more about what their art is about. And that makes a buying experience a little bit more personal.
Yeah.
And of course, the money stays here. You're not here in the community.
Well, it's interesting. You started this art market, and now it's quite an event here on 19th Street.
Yes.
A lot of people come out for it. A lot of fun stuff is happening here. Why do you think the community embraced it?
It's fun. It's an event.
I love that answer. It's fun.
We have music, we've got food, we've got 40 booths of artists, and there's great people watching. And it's just an activity where the whole family or just couples or individuals can come and have a good time.
And to find out more information?
FirstSaturdayArtsMarket.com.
Up next, Bootown is a non-traditional theater company founded by a pair of UH grads nearly a decade ago. The company is known for its monthly grown-up storytime sessions and other edgy performances. Recently, Bootown used shadow puppetry to tell the story of a platypus that gets sold to a circus.
I was watching Life of Mammals, which David Attenborough narrates, and it's really wonderful. And he came to this section that was about the platypus, but you didn't know that it was about the platypus. And he was telling a little bit about their history, and he's just so animated and so great. And he said that when explorers first discovered this animal and sent word back, nobody believed them, and that they thought it was like a unicorn to them because it's so weird. And then it just zoomed on David Attenborough's face, and he goes, "But no, it's real. It's alive. It's the platypus." And it was just really magical, and I fell in love with David Attenborough and the platypus at the same time. And so yeah, that's where we came up with the idea. So he gets taken from his homeland, basically stolen for scientific research, and then there's some scenes where he's getting worked on in a lab, and then he gets sold to a circus once they're done with him to live in a sideshow tent, and that's basically as far as I can go. I mean, what are you gonna do if you get stolen? I mean, there's also, what I think is the saddest part is that there's no way for him to go home ever. He's never going home. And so he just has to figure it out and make the best of what's given to him. And at first, it's the worst that's given to him. And there's really no good to be made of it. But once he's sold to the circus, he can kind of start to adapt and figure out what he's gonna do now. I had a lot of grand ideas about things that I wanted to do with like moving parts and things that are really, you need more 3D puppets for. And at first when we were starting out, I was like, I'm gonna play with that. I wanna see what that's like, and you have to adjust your whole set too, because it's not just a table with projectors at that point. You need to have shelves attached to your screens if you're gonna have 3D things built up onto them, and we didn't actually do any of that. And I like it that way because I think what's great about shadow puppets is they're so simple, and it's just shapes and two colors, and that's all you really have to communicate. I do think the moving puppets that we do have are the best that we've made so far. We made a couple platypuses where his heads and his tails move, and I just think it looks so cool. And I think it has a greater emphasis because it's special when that happens. It's not just everywhere all over the place. So 2 overhead projectors on one screen. Pretty magical.
To find out what shenanigans the theater company is up to next, go to bootown.org. Now we're off to Milwaukee, where artist Melissa Kane is bringing the centuries-old tradition of stained glass into the modern times.
I really am attracted to detail, so line work and shading and pure color are what really inspires me with glass art. My name is Melissa Janda, and I am a stained glass artist. I always was drawing as a child, so I've always been interested in art. It's been 20 years since I left art school, and I've been doing it ever since. Typically when people think of painted glass, that's generally what they think of, you know, all the church windows that you see. And so I really try to incorporate, I take those same techniques and I just use them in a way that I find interesting. Stained glass can be a difficult medium. There's a lot of different things about it that that really take a lot of practice. Every step along the way is another part of the craft. It's really a medium like no other because of the light, because it requires light to pass through it in order to view it. And you can change it in so many different ways, with paint, with color, with texture, with density of glass. One piece can look different at 8 different times of the day or season, and I am eternally fascinated by that, by the light. The difference between traditional stained glass and what I do as an artist is, that's hard to say because it's really steeped in tradition, which is one of the things that I like about it. The painting on glass is another form of expression, and what I do can be the same techniques, but a more modern interpretation. You're relying on the light to pass through it, and so you have to be constantly aware of how that's going to change things. You can't just keep applying things and changing things like you would with oil paints. And also you're relying on firing it. You have to fire it in a kiln to get the paint to be a permanent surface of the glass, and so you're building up layers of values and texture. When you're painting something, knowing not just how it looks in front of you now, but how that's going to translate into the actual window. So you kind of have to account for that. I guess I would compare it more to like a watercolor or even printmaking. It can be a very different process than typical canvas painting. The piece I'm currently working on now is a commission for a residence. They have an older house, but they are also interested in more modern design. So that makes it kind of interesting, because I also like that too, the tradition and the modern kind of all together. They chose animals as their subject matter. And so there's 3 kids and the parents, and they all chose their own animal that they felt reflected them the most. And it's going to go on 2 side panels that go alongside some French doors in their house. Here we have a scaled version of the design. This is the set of doors and then the 2 side panels. I start by doing sketches. They're generally a scaled down version. It'll be exact proportions of the space, but a small scale version. Get the design worked out, and then after the sketches are done in color, then I'll do a full-size drawing. And I need to have that. If there's artwork in the painting, then I work out everything full size, and then I can also transfer that into patterns for cutting the glass. Once I have patterns, the pattern shows me the shape that the piece of glass has to be, and also the color of the glass. And I cut the glass around the pattern, and once that's all finished, then I paint the glass and fire the glass into a kiln, and then once the whole painting process is finished, then I fabricate the window. I use the same drawing, I transfer that drawing onto another layer of paper that I can use to form the glass around the lid. Well, leading the window can be complicated depending on the design, and that basically involves taking a lead channel and forming it around the glass and cutting it to fit. Then all the joints have to be soldered together. That holds the whole window together. And then once that happens, there's also a puttying process where you take a glazing compound and you press it in between so it encloses all of the spaces between the glass and the lead, and it takes away all those little reflections that you might get. And then basically the window is complete. It can take a pretty long time to do it all from beginning to end. Of course, it depends on how large the windows are or how many pieces there are. It's definitely a long process. There's still always that wow factor of seeing it really come to life. Some of my favorite pieces are just the really little things that I do that are almost like sketches. I really like to do figure drawings. Sometimes I'll just take old figure drawings out of my sketchbooks and I'll use them and just incorporate them into glass, and sometimes just those little pieces bring me a lot of happiness. Sometimes even as much as the large production pieces. Glass really changes a space a lot, as a lot of art does, and so it's kind of nice being in the business of enhancing spaces, because most people are always happy when you make something look good, and I really hope that other people see that as well.
For more information, visit sadlergallery.net. Up next, Vegas welcomes Shakespeare to the Strip, where his play, The Tempest, continues to work its magic.
I fell in love with The Tempest when I was probably 11 or 12 years old, because I had been doing magic since I was 5. And there are 2 Shakespeare plays that are heavily filled with magic, Macbeth and The Tempest.
I'm evangelical a little bit about making Shakespeare accessible for everyone, but Shakespeare isn't designed to be read, it's designed to be watched, and it's designed to be watched in productions that are passionate and full of energy and by outstanding actors, which is what we have on this production. I'm Aaron Postner. I'm the co-director and co-conceiver of this production of The Tempest.
I'm Teller. I'm co-directing this production and also kind of leading the magic team on it. The Tempest is a story about a magician who has been wronged many years ago.
It's a story of a father of a young daughter who's marooned on a desert island, usurped by his younger brother. He's the former Duke of Menil.
This particular magician decides to take revenge by using his magic powers, and his magic powers are not Harry Potter powers, where you're actually doing things. His magic powers are the powers to make a show. So he uses the creation of phantasms and illusions as a psychological assault on those people who hurt him many years ago.
With the aid of his sort of supernatural confederates, he attempts to take revenge and chooses rather to forgive, and that's the rough story. Teller and I co-conceive and co-direct everything. It is very much the combination of our sensibilities coming together to tell this story in a unique way.
Well, Aaron and I have been working on this version of The Tempest for about 5 years. Aaron comes at this show from the point of view of a father, because this is a story in one sense about a father and a daughter, and I come from this show from the point of view of a magician. I think it's about magic. He thinks it's about the relationship between a father and a daughter, and in fact, it's both.
Obviously, Prospero, the central character in The Tempest, is a magician, so there should be magic in the show, but usually this is done by sort of stage effects or a colored light, or somebody says somebody feels something. We've tried to put magic at the very center of it, real magic, astonishing magic that puts the characters in the same place as the audience is, amazed and knocked off their beat. So The Tempest is a famously difficult play because it's a really demanding story. Sometimes less is more. In this one, I think more is more, and that it wants the magic and the music and the movement and the energy. Shakespeare wove a lot of music into the play. We've expanded on that with the Tom Waits repertoire so that we are making it even more musical, really weaving the magic and the music together to make that part of the power of the island.
The Rough Magic Orchestra is our 4-person band that represents the musical spirit of the island. And our band lives above the stage in a little sort of niche that looks like maybe a crazy Tom Waits and Kathleen Brennan style bar. You know, Prospero in this play says, "And when I have required some heavenly music to work mine ends upon their senses that this airy charm is for." He uses music as, again, another form of psychological assault, and that's what our band does. I've known Tom Waits and Kathleen Brennan for probably 20 years. And I was with Tom and Kathleen, and I showed them a book of Willard the Wizard. And Willard the Wizard toured the Dust Bowl during the Depression. And I showed them some pictures of the band that Willard the Wizard used to have. And Tom looked at it and said, "Those are my people." And Kathleen is a huge Shakespeare fan, so as we began to fall into discussions on this, it's so apparent to me now the kind of world that you feel when you are listening to the Tom Waits and Kathleen Brennan songs is a magical, Halloweenish, American, very heartfelt world that precisely aligns with the sensibility that we have about The Tempest. I think Shakespeare would have used magic. Magic seems to me the most fundamental of art forms. Because when I go to the theater, or I go to a museum, or I go to a symphony, the first thing I want is to be amazed. And all great art does that. You sit there and you go, and that is the essence of art.
This is Shakespeare at the end of his career, writing with as much complexity, as much love, as much knowledge, as much sense of theatricality as he ever had. So it's got almost everything in it. It's got music, it's got magic, it's got the supernatural.
Lots of people think that the magic that is alluded to in the play is very much like the feelings a playwright would have for all the magic of the theater. And it's perfectly possible that that's in some way a farewell by Shakespeare. You know, the thing that breaks my heart about this story is that at the end, Prospero has, like, I would say like me, a passion probably akin to the intensity that a heroin addict feels for his drug, for magic. And at the end of this play, Prospero realizes that the only way to do the right thing by the daughter that he loves so much is to relinquish his hold on that magic, go back to the real world, give up magic, and take care of business. This breaks my heart, and I think it also broke Shakespeare's heart. He has Prospero say that he's going to go back to Milan where every third thought will be my grave. So there's an undertone of profound melancholy to this happy ending. Thanks to the Smith Center, Vegas has a real commercial and artistic heart now. We are originating here, something that will then move from here to Cambridge and who knows where beyond. I'm very proud of that.
We think we're doing something unique here, and we hope a lot of people will want to see it. We hope it will go far and wide.
We have great musical performances, fantastic gymnastic performances, and as good magic as you'll see anywhere on the Strip. Except we have one thing that most of those shows don't have: a really good script by a really good writer named Bill Shakespeare.
I think the theater can expand us. I think the theater can make us feel and think more, can get your blood racing in your veins a little bit. When you leave the theater, colors should be a little brighter. The world should be a little richer, and you should be thinking about the world in some ways that you didn't when you walked in. But people don't want to come to the theater to be bored. They don't want to come and go to a museum. They want to see something that makes them more alive, more engaged, more excited. And that's everything that we're trying to do here.
From First Saturday Arts Market in the Heights, that's a wrap for Arts Insight. Join us again next week for more insightful views of artists in Houston and around the country. For everyone here at Houston Public Media, I'm Menil. Thanks for watching and have a great week.